There's no deal yet to end the Iran war, but U.S. President Donald Trump told Fox News today he believes the end is near.
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
It comes as Pakistan's army chief is in Iran today. Despite no deal over the weekend in Islamabad, both the U.S. and Iran have expressed interest in continuing negotiations through those Pakistani mediators. I'm joined now by Aaron David Miller, who is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a former Middle East peace negotiator. Aaron David Miller, always good to see you. Thanks for being here today, sir.
David, thanks for having me.
I don't know how to assess the president's assessment that he thinks it's almost over, but, you know, talks did fail. We're in a double blockade situation. How do you view where things are right now in this conflict?
I mean, the president said this before, and once you start a war, the reality is it's very difficult to control the timing. You know, every study's been done on every interstate conflict since 1815. The average length of an interstate conflict since 1815 is 3 to 4 months. So I suspect, no, the war won't be over in 2 weeks. The nature of the conflict has changed, however. It may be, and again, I'll take a flyer here, that we've seen the last of the last 6 weeks. That is to say, American and Israeli escalation dominance, a level of strikes comprehensive on a variety of targets. I think the war has shifted to another phase. Call it economic warfare accompanied by negotiations. And I think the only way that this comes to an end is through some agreement between the U.S. and Iran. The Israeli piece of this, I think Israel was important with respect to the timing of the war.
Right.
I don't think the Israelis will play any decisive role in terms of its conclusion. So I don't think we're a week away. I don't think we're 2 weeks away. Negotiations with Iran have only two speeds, slow and slower. These are very tough issues, and the gaps are still considerable.
Yeah, the strategic goals of the U.S. Shift in this. Iran's is obviously survival and kind of winning by resisting the might of the United States, which it has done to this point, right? So how does the United States at this point get out of this in a way that allows the president to claim victory? Because that's obviously very important to him.
Yeah, I mean, the victory narrative is important, but you know, I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. thinking about domestic politics. I don't think there's a constituency, maybe some conservative and tough-minded Republicans. I don't think there's a constituency in this country that Donald Trump cares about that would do anything other than breathe a collective sigh of relief if the president found a way out of this war, victory narrative notwithstanding. The Democrats will pile on. And again, I've worked and voted for Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
Foreign policy establishment will find all sorts of things wrong with what's happened. And there are many things that are wrong with this, particularly a war of choice. But I think the main accomplishment, the president needs to point to two. Number one, the straits were open on February 28th. They clearly need to be reopened to international traffic without any sort of toll booth or constraint on what gets through and what doesn't. That's number one. And number two, I think he needs something on the nuclear issue. And herein, I think, lies the real crux of the matter. Without some concession that goes beyond what President Obama achieved in the Iranian nuclear agreement, 2015, which I might add the president walked out of.
Yeah.
2018. We might not be having this conversation had that not occurred. But I think those are the two issues that he needs something that normal humans would regard as a success.
The Strait of Hormuz, you can see there being an economic self-interest for Iran to maybe get to a compromise there. But on going beyond the Obama nuclear deal, what will be incentive for Iran to do something like that, certainly at this stage of the conflict?
Well, again, on enrichment, the Obama agreement conceded the right to enrich, but at levels that were a fraction, 3.67. I think the Iranians were prepared to accept and keep maybe 300 pounds of that sort of enriched material. No, I think in the case of Trump, to have this a win, he'd have to find a way to prevent Iranian enrichment for a prolonged period of time. Now, the administration has talked about a moratorium. That doesn't mean a permanent end. It means a pause for 20 years. The Iranians have come back with 5. So I think that would be a success. The Obama agreement never got anything even remotely related to a moratorium, let alone one that would be extend multiple years. So I think that's one. The other issue is the highly enriched uranium, the 900 pounds, which is buried somewhere, which could provide a foundation for a regime who wanted to re-up and re-energize their nuclear program. That's the other issue that is going to prove, I think, even more troublesome. So again, slow and slower are the pace of these negotiations. Could you imagine an end quickly? No.
No.
I cannot imagine a quick end to this.
Well, look, we're at really the midway point of the 2-week ceasefire, right? I think it expires a week from today on the 22nd of April, if I'm doing my math right. I mean, who knows where things are in a week, but do we anticipate it just goes back to a hot war beyond what we're seeing now, or do they find a way to just keep talking? What do you think?
Dan, I'll take a flyer here. I don't think it's anybody's interest, maybe with the possible exception of the Israelis, to resume strikes on Iranian military and economic targets. And of course, the president last week several days ago, talked about destroying Iranian civilization. I mean, all of that is frankly tethered to a measure of insanity and unhinged behavior, not appropriate for any American president, regardless of political party or views. I don't see a return to what we watched over the last 6 to 7 weeks. And I do believe, if in fact we're right, that in fact a negotiated solution of some kind is in the offing, you're going to have the time and space to do that. And you cannot do that against the backdrop of the kind of war that we've watched. So, yeah, I would think an extension
Right.
It makes sense and is probably realistic.
So just as a final point before we let you go, sir, there is also the Israel-Lebanon component of what is happening here. A Canadian citizen was killed in the conflict there. Yesterday we learned. There's mixed reporting of the potential for a ceasefire. We know that Lebanon and Israel are talking despite having no formal diplomatic relations. What is your sense of whether that element of this conflict can be curbed in the short to medium term?
I mean, over the long term, the Israelis will not be able to solve the Hezbollah problem, either will the Lebanese. But a ceasefire, a cessation of Israeli military activities of the character and nature we've seen over the last several weeks, I think is possible. And one final point. If Donald Trump decides that a ceasefire is in his interests and it is necessary to grease the skids of his real priority here, which is finding a pathway out of this war within a reasonable period of time, he'll call up the prime minister and say, make it happen. He has enormous leverage over the prime minister for one simple reason, and that is 2026, the government goes to term in October, the Israeli government. You will have an election, maybe even before that, and Netanyahu needs Trump as an active campaigner, pushing for a pardon, telling the world that Israel could not exist without Benjamin Netanyahu, and demonstrating the seamlessness and partnership of the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Trump's more popular by far in Israel than Benjamin Netanyahu is. So a ceasefire is possible, and Trump could apply the necessary pressure to make it happen.
Would the need for Donald Trump's support, would that be more beneficial for Mr. Netanyahu than the way the wars against Hamas and against Hezbollah have elevated his standing in his country? He's been criticized for using the war to help his political career.
I think it's going to be very difficult for the prime minister to run on Lebanon or to run on Gaza, and certainly to run on a war that has not accomplished what he has promised as a strategic defeat for Iran. But remember, this is a man on trial for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in a Jerusalem District Court, 3 years running. He needs to maintain himself in power. Otherwise, the future is a plea deal, which drives him out of politics, and there's precedent with former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, jail time.
Layers upon layers upon layers. Aaron David Miller, always appreciate your analysis and your time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, David. Great questions. Happy to be here with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.